I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly. I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name's Jeff Cook. I'm a philosopher in Greeley, Colorado. With me is TJ Wilson, businessman, lover of theology, and Enneagram Ninja.
Hello.
Hey, guess what?
What?
I'm taking back the captain's chair.
Oh, thank the Lord.
I have the con. Is that short for control?
Would you be number one?
I'm number one.
Yeah.
No, is number one the right-hand man?
Because number one is the first mate,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So Riker is the number one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although when he's in the doghouse, he becomes number two. Heyo!
Heyo.
Yeah, what are you? You're just captain. He's Captain Jean-Luc Picard. You know what we need to think about now that Easter is not over, has launched us into the spring?
Spring cleaning?
We need some high side thinking.
That's probably a good idea.
Easter is, in our tradition, it's the starting line for us doing all the other things that we ought to do that are beautiful, brilliant, and make the world a better place.
The spring of the church calendar.
That's right. And that's not just the stuff out there. That's also the stuff within. I want to talk about high side thinking today. I'm excited about this topic. If you are not aware, the fine folks at Around the Circle and some listeners gather once a month on Zoom. And we generally just pick a topic and just talk through all the numbers with people who are actually those numbers. This podcast's topic is coming out of that conversation, which I really enjoyed recently. It was just like, how does high side thinking work? Just to set this up, you and I have routinely said that it's a bad move to reject your Enneagram type. It's a real temptation. And actually a lot of Enneagram teachers can go down this road of saying something like, your type is bad.
Mm-hmm.
You got thoughts on that?
I mean, it's we fully agree that like if your type is in the driver's seat and not you, that's probably bad. If your armor, the personality that you put on to keep you safe, if that's the only way by which you navigate the world, then you're not in control. And that's bad. But that means the bad things about your type are bad. That doesn't mean all things about your type are bad.
That's a good way to put it. The bad things about your type are bad. That's
Yes.
what makes them bad things about your type.
Yep.
A better way. It's kind of like the person who doesn't like their body. And why don't you like your body? And they just name all the quote unquote bad things about their body. What they normally mean is, here's the unhealthy sides of my body. My knee doesn't work the right way. You know, I have this illness. Yeah, I wish I could run faster or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. I just noticed the other day that my left ear sticks out farther than my right ear.
Oh.
And that's a thing that I've just been going about my whole life and didn't even know about this huge problem on my head. But if I cut off my whole ear, like if I cut off the ears, if I just get rid of them, that is also problematic.
It's a great illustration for this. Your body isn't on its own bad. There may be unhealthy elements to your body. And sometimes we can't actually do anything about that. What's fantastic about the Enneagram is most of the time there are real paths for us to improve in our personality and our type and our motive in how we come to the world. In fact, one of the rich elements of living is our ability to really grow over time as a human being.
Yeah.
And what does it look like to get healthy ends up being the target for Enneagram. And that requires some high side thinking.
Yeah.
High side thinking for us is really naming some of the virtues, the best elements of your personality, of your type as it is, the things that you bring to others, the things you bring to the world, the ways that you yourself are centered, healthy, and feel as though it's good to be alive. And getting to those places can be extraordinarily difficult sometimes, but that is the art of living.
Yeah.
I don't know that I got anything else. You got anything else before we jump in?
I don't think so.
Bang. What we're going to do then is focus on the traditional list of Enneagram virtues. And we may be talking about some holy ideas in here as well. But one of the things that came out in a conversation that we were having on the Zoom, by the way, if you want to join us, go to aroundthecircle.org and just click on events. There's links there. We'd love to have you. The thing that came out was so often many of us, and I know a lot of Enneagram teachers who want to say something of this sort, there's like a desire, a deep desire to get into your security number, as though your security number is who you're supposed to be. In using Joey Shuey's language, reaching for your security number is like a thing. Like that can be a temptation, that can be a good desire at times. The road to security is ever elusive, but I think there's really something here that we're going to talk about in terms of getting there. And it really starts actually with your stress number and focusing on the high side of your stress number. The thing about each of us, when things are going not even badly, when I'm simply working on myself, my stress number is always available, as opposed to my security number, which is a reach. My stress number is something I can pivot into, and I can use the tools there fairly easily. In fact, as we've talked about in the past, using your stress number when you're not stressed is a real tool for growth,
right?
For health and for perspective.
It's like a leg up from, like, everything about the Enneagram is dynamic, which is a big part of what we love. There's movement. You can get things from your stress and security types. You can, like, that you're drawing from wherever you can find it to become a more whole person. And like our stress type, whether we are in stress or not, is always available to us. And if we want to grab the tools that are there that are useful, we can.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to learn how.
What became clear in our conversation on Zoom was how the high side of our stress number is much easier to grab hold of than the high side of our center. So we'll go through this. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Enneagram virtues, we'll go through this in turn, but that's the philosophy behind where we're going. Each of the types have a virtue associated with that type. Serenity for ones, humility for twos, honesty for threes, equanimity for fours, non-attachment for fives, courage for six, sobriety for sevens, innocence for eight, and action for nines. I shotgun that very fast just for you to hear. You probably heard your type and you heard the virtue associated with it. This is what it looks like to be healthiest when you're most balanced in your center. You're not in stress, you're not in security, you're living your best life in the high side of your motive. What's interesting to me is naming that virtue associated with your stress number is an incredibly effective tool for actually getting you to the high side of your motive, high side of just being centered. So today we're talking about the virtues of each of the types and kind of how they work together. The high side of our type relates and interacts with the high side of our stress number and the high side of our security number. And we're just going to play this out and kind of see what happens.
Yeah, I like to call it the high side highway.
Pump up the Tom Cochran.
Great.
Starting with nines. We'll just jump into this and showcase how this all works.
Love it.
Nines, when they're centered and really elevate to the high side of nineness, get into right action. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's really easy for nines to do, correct?
It's as easy as, what's something that's really difficult for normal people?
Performing brain surgery or...
Yes, it's as easy as brain surgery.
Easy as brain surgery. All the virtues are incredibly difficult for the type. And when you see the list of virtues, you're just like, oh, hell.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm getting into here?
Right.
It's weight loss is really about one thing. It's just about reducing your calories. And then you see what that requires in terms of your meal selection, you're just like, okay.
Just like right action. So I have mixed feelings about this virtue of right action because I think that it comes through for nines every single time we decide to do something instead of not do something.
Mm-hmm.
But also that is very, very difficult sometimes, especially in the face of large, overcoming significant obstacles.
Or obstacles you perceive as significant.
Which sometimes are significant.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Like getting out of bed.
Like getting out of bed.
I mean,
It's
a huge
difficult
obstacle.
every day. Every day is a struggle.
As you're saying it, one of the quick ways to getting to the high side of your type is working on your repressed center,
Mhm.
which we've talked about a lot. So obviously for nines, getting into their body, engaging what they're going to do, right action. It's just right there.
Yeah.
How else could you get there without having to just work on your repressed center? That's what we're going to talk about. One way is to pivot a little bit, to use some of the tools that begin the process of what would you call this? I'm like thinking all amped up kind of imagery here for nines because a lot of it is about motion.
Mhm.
That's not necessarily going to be true of the other types, but
Well, and it largely about figuring out how to get. You need some type of catalyst to get the motion happening. You
Yeah.
need like something to start you moving. And sometimes that's an outside force, but sometimes there isn't an outside force available, or you've so thoroughly protected yourself against the outside forces that they don't work. You need something else.
and you can grab hold of that in sixth space in a variety of ways. Actually, I mean, there can be some fear that can supercharge you a little bit, shock you into action.
Yep.
But on the high side of sixth space, the virtue for six is courage. You'll notice just how clean this is, that going to that space of seeking to grab hold of the courage available in sixth space. Maybe you'll have to speak to this, whether or not that's easy or not. I find that getting to the high side of my stress number is much easier than getting to the high side of my number.
Yeah. Like doing that in and of itself is valuable, but it doesn't take you anywhere.
Yep.
Like when I am in stress, when nines find themselves in that stress place where things are breaking down, you aren't getting the things that you want by your normal means, and now your brain is spinning and you're doing things on autopilot because you don't know how to put stuff in order. And the thing that you can grab in that sixth space is courage, is some type of understanding that like not only are you capable, but courage is about deciding to do something with your capabilities. And so that, like, courage by itself is fine, but what it does for nines in particular is push us forward. When you make a decision to act and move in the face of the things that are stressing you out, you move into action.
Yeah. Nines don't often lack understanding of what they should do.
Right.
They lack the fuel to execute.
Right.
It's going to be true.
And when this is a good distinction between the low side of stress for us and the high side of stress. Because the low side of stress is mental spinning, is anxiety, is not really knowing what to do. The high side, when you're there intentionally, you start to put the information in the right order because the courage available tells you you can.
Is that trusting of yourself like a six-way experience, or is this different for
I think that's part of
nines?
it.
Okay.
Courage, because as we've discussed before, and I'm sure will come up when we actually get to sixes, there's a difference between courage and recklessness.
Mm-hmm.
Courage involves trusting yourself and your own judgment. Recklessness is just flying into the situation unprepared.
Yeah. I suppose that's where the thinking has already been done. Like, nines don't lack wisdom most of the time. That's
Right.
they process with thinking. It's really just enacting it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fuel to get there at 6. What that you'll notice the highway here, moving from courage to right action is real clean at that point in time, because you've gone to your stress number to get the fuel. Perhaps you've sat there for a minute to really, get the courage up, as it were, but then it pushes you into execution.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be 9s when they're centered and at the high side of their type. This is what it looks like.
Yeah. And the distinction that needs to be made there is that it is right action, not just action.
Right.
Because 9s are very good at unproductive doing. And what right action is about is facing things that we might be avoiding by doing something that doesn't need to be done. Right action is about taking the right path at the right time.
One thing that happens for 4s, 5s, and 9s is not being able to see the meaning in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the real fruits that's going to emerge with right action is this is a door. And it's a door into your secure self, and hopefully into the high side of security, because what ends up happening is when the 9 executes right action is they will suddenly be aware that their presence truly matters to other people and to themselves and to the world.
Mm-hmm.
That truth will emerge, and truth is actually the high side of 3. So in moving towards security, that truth emerges of how valuable the 9 is in the world, and the meaning that can be quite elusive should pop with that engagement.
I like the word veracity better than truth, and I think that there's a sense of like not just recognizing that your presence matters, but also recognizing that there is a true thing that you bring to the table that you have sort of hidden. Like, but I've said this before, my father-in-law did not know that he and I are not on the same page politically until years after we had been having all of these conversations, because I'm really good at agreeing with the things that he says that I agree with, but not letting him know that I disagree with other stuff. And part of right action moves us into this place of truth, of veracity, of recognizing that the whole truth is actually really important and valuable, and brings you back into action of being able to, speak our truth and like bring that truth to the forefront, bring it to the places where we've been avoiding that truth, which is part of right action. And then it becomes this cycle where they just feed each other.
It's perfect. I think that's actually what the etymology of veracity is. It's veritas, which is truth in Latin, and
Mm-hmm.
I think the rest of that has to do with putting into practice the truth. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
but case in point, the big picture, it seems, comes full circle for me there in terms of there's something about being healthy in your body, in which like your exercise regimen matters, your what you're taking into your body, calories matter, like just how you perceive yourself matters. I suppose we could say all sorts of different things that matter. These are different elements to yourself. As I'm listening to this, we all have, in terms of enneagram language, we are our stress number, our security number, and our center. And it's not just that they're tools, but they're real elements of ourselves that, when they're working all in coordinated fashion, can really raise us up even in the worst times to our best self. In fact, something you and I have talked about in the past is like really the heroic life will often come out in the high side of our stress number.
Mm-hmm.
So even when things that like heroism is required only when things are going very, 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 very badly.
Right.
But you can still be a thriving human being in those situations. And then as you're talking, that's entirely what I see here is, what does it look like to be a thriving 9
Mm-hmm.
in the midst of conflict and things you don't want to do, and, and just the world being the world. This feels like a very clean, okay, here are the tools that are available to me to move
Yeah.
into really healthy spots.
and they're propellants that move us into the other healthy tools that are available.
Propellant is a great word. Yeah. Fuel.
Yep.
Let's move to ones. So my experience of this, and I've talked about this in the past, is I'm just very aware of high side of my stress number, which for me, ones move to 4 in stress. 4's virtue is equanimity. There is a kaleidoscopic beauty. There is equal value among all of the pieces that all fit together in wonderful ways to be discovered. There's an image of balance there, of moderation. You see anything else with equanimity? I suppose that's my...
Yeah, I think you covered it, like recognizing the beauty and value of everything in its place.
We'll talk about why that's valuable for 4s in a second, but for me, as is often said about ones can be incredibly self-critical. And just being able to see not only that their own flaws have a place in their own story in the world, but that there is a balancing here. My sins aren't any greater or any lesser than everyone else's can be incredibly helpful because of the one's inner critic, because of our anger directed inward. Equanimity kind of smooths things out and says, let's take a much more moderate approach to how we see ourselves in the world, and even our chores, our tasks, the things we want to accomplish. And when you even things out, your job isn't perhaps more important than anyone else's job. What's produced is something like serenity. It's like there's actually a peace that can be found there when ones embrace, that moderating equanimity that they can get it for.
Mm-hmm.
And that can move you back into one space in a great way, in that you have balanced in 4 space. You're not using all your energy to bludgeon yourself anymore. And you have permission to be serene about the world and everything in it, about your tasks, about you don't have nothing to do, but you don't have everything to do. That's equanimity.
Yeah, that's great.
And that can flatten things. Flatten isn't the right word there, but that can make things...
Even things out.
Yeah, it makes it even keel, serenity. These are all, they sound like nautical terms, or, I'm in a boat and I want things to just be smooth for a minute.
Right.
And I want it to be serene.
Serene also doesn't mean still.
Correct, yeah. No, it can be movement, but it's like a clean movement. For those of you who have gone water skiing before, there's something about being on a lake that has no movement. When lakes are choppy, you're kind of bouncing up and down and you're getting dragged behind a boat. But when water skiing on a flat lake, it's just, you're cutting through the water, and there's no bouncing, no ricochets. There's, what would you call that? You're not getting tossed all around.
It's serene. It's serenity.
But you're moving.
I understand the concept of what you were trying to say. I have zero experience with water skiing. So
how about downhill skiing? Powder days are the same.
No.
This is why people like powder days as well.
No skiing.
Give you a foot of powder, it flattens everything such that your knees just don't ache. You're just like, oh, it's just cutting. It's brilliant.
I've been in a canoe before. Okay, so when I think a lot about, when I think about equanimity, I think a lot about that illustration game where everyone starts at the front.
Okay.
Like you're in a line and you're trying to get to the other side of a field, and the director or someone has, okay, if you are from a family where your parents are still together, take a step forward.
Right.
If you if your parents own their house, take a step forward. If you, et cetera, take a step forward. And it's not like the goal of this illustration is not to put other people in front of others. It's to help all of us see that there are things outside of our control which place us where we are in our lives.
Sure.
There's lots of things that are within our control that affect all of this as well. But there are a lot of things in our lives, in our childhood, in our social status, in the place that we live, in the part of town that we live, all kinds of things that we have no control over whatsoever. that inform where we are in the race.
Yep.
And equanimity is about recognizing that reality and then saying, oh, the people behind me aren't there because they suck. They're there because of things that are outside of their control. And the people in front of me aren't there because they're better than me. They're there because of things that are outside of their control. And when you can embrace that reality as a one, then the self-criticism, the way that you put yourself in this place where you were the worst human because you didn't do all of these things perfectly and all of this stuff needs to be fixed. And not only that, but all of these other people in my life, they need to get their stuff fixed too. That goes away when you can embrace the kind of equanimity that's available and you can enter into a space where you're in your lane and the people around you are in their lane and you're not needing to fix it. You're not needing to categorize it as good or bad. You're not needing to say this is something that has to be changed simply because you're using your own kind of flawed judgment. You can enter into the serenity of flowing with the river as it flows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would take it a step further and say there's something that exercise, which is seeking to expose privilege, misses an element of saying sometimes people's lives are quite beautiful despite the difficulties.
Yes.
It's here it is, it's the opposite of the envy that Fours experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pushing against seeing things in terms that would elevate, this person over that person, as it were. Everything has a place, and they're beautiful and worth naming is beautiful.
Yeah.
And in fact, the people who seem to be the most privileged often suffer in ways that we don't see that's actually quite extraordinary. And sometimes people who look like they have the hardest lives actually have stumbled into great fortune,
right,
because of their hardships.
Right.
Being able to take on that. I suppose that would be the mindset that at least is helpful for me to take on.
Mm-hmm.
That gets me into serene space.
Yeah. Where you don't have to fix it. It's not assigning value judgments to things that don't need value judgments.
Right.
And accepting the way things are in a way that is not my responsibility to fix it anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
It can be, but it's not mine to fix everything.
Right.
That's one of the things on that sort of those sorts of exercises. It's like, oh, well, I must need to do everything possible to ensure that everybody else, gets bumped forward so that they're not always taking step backs all the time. It's clearly my fault, my responsibility. I'm moving.
If nobody else is going to do it, then I have to.
Right.
Sometimes it just doesn't need to be done.
The serenity that is there is quite valuable in that, for all thinking repressed numbers, what is yours to do needs to be primary.
Yes.
So as you were saying, serenity doesn't mean no movement, but it does mean that there's a fluidity. I'm in the zone that kind of comes up there. The thing that happens then is that door to security opens. And the virtue for 7, which is the security number for ones, the door to 7 opens. The 7's virtue is sobriety. I don't think this is sobriety as 7's experience it. I think this can be sobriety of something like judgment. We talk about being sober-minded, perhaps. Mm-hmm. I also think that the sobriety comes in exactly these places where we're saying, this is mine to do, and this isn't. And that in itself is also, it's a moderating. It's saying I need to focus on something with intentionality and say when the job is done, the job is done.
Right. And
that strikes me as a sober posture towards oneself in the world and the addictions that ones can have.
Yeah. And I think that idea of addictions, when we talk about addictions here, we should expand our vision of what addiction means, because it's not just about alcohol or drugs or gambling or any of those things. It's also about the need to fix. It's about that critical voice saying that everything that you've done could have been better. It's the mental way that one's sort of like build in this sort of like black and white thinking about the world, and we can't possibly understand like there is no movement if things aren't black and white. That's not necessary in a sober space. You don't have to. You aren't compelled by this way of seeing the world.
It should be said that that's fruit to enjoy. Like the high side of our security number is much more like this is the delights of life.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've kind of said with security numbers in the past, this isn't somewhere that you necessarily live.
Right.
But perhaps it is part of a common rhythm and experience. So we were talking beforehand about this, and I thought your idea was spot on, that this is part of the loop, as it were, that can occur. You want to talk about that?
Like learning how to enjoy the space where you are going with the flow, where you are more open to like not needing to fix everything. Learning how to enjoy that space will allow you to enjoy that space more. Like it becomes a cycle from sobriety to serenity, back to sobriety, back to serenity.
Yep. Thing that was going through my mind is I start learning a language, and then I'm able to kind of understand these movies I was never able to watch, which makes me want to learn more of the language. It makes me open to more of the movies that I wanted to watch, and then it just builds on itself.
Yeah.
Love that.
Absolutely.
Twos, when they're centered, their virtue is humility, which can be very difficult to get to. Twos are going to struggle with pride. How do you get there without just like sheer effort? What's available in 8 space when twos move to 8 into their stress number in the high side is the virtue of innocence. What do you see there as the move then for twos?
Well, I think I don't want this to be a punching bag space, but I am entertained by the idea of like twos who are not very self-aware insisting that they are incredibly humble. Like they never think about themselves. They're definitely not. They're the best at humility. Mm-hmm. Getting to like trying to manufacture humility in that space doesn't work. Like it just breeds pride. And so like finding yourself in that stress place, or even like intentionally saying, okay, what is there to gain when I am able to like stand up on my hind legs and be strong and grab onto something simple and true, but also like the innocence available at 8 is not needing to protect yourself from the world, not needing to like stake your claim, not needing to be aggressive, or like the innocence available at 8 for twos, I think is something that is going to allow them to move more into that space of sort of like the childlike humility that's available when you pair it with innocence. Is I can do anything, and not necessarily that I'm thinking about myself in that matter.
That's what I hear there also. It's similar to the 9s, where the 9s need the courage to get into their bite. The 2, it's the fuel, the propellant is innocence here, the childlikeness to allow you to move into humble space.
Yeah. And the innocence of not being prideful.
Yeah.
Is the particular sort of bent here. Like you are not the master of the universe, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that also means that like being a child means that you can accept something from other people, and recognizing that you even have needs. And pride says, I don't have any needs. Mm-hmm. But humility says, I need people to come around me and take care of me, because I am just like everyone else, and I am here to serve other people, and other people are here to serve me.
Yep.
And that's part of innocence. When twos can tap into that, they can do this better than anyone else.
Mm-hmm. Opens up the door to equanimity. We just talked about equanimity, but the security move for twos is into 4 space. And so this is the virtue at 4. In humility, you're able to enter into that balancing, moderating space. What do you see there for twos?
I think we talk a lot about the possibility of codependence is so much higher with twos than most other types, and thinking about that with the idea of equanimity is like when you have that innocence and you pull into this humility space and then you go and you reach for equanimity, then you recognize like these things are mine to do and other people are on their own journey.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I may want to help this other person with their own thing, that's not my space, because humility says I know what I'm capable of and I don't need to prove that I can do things that I can't.
Yep. Some of the stuff I see there's a struggle for twos is having all of their emotional radar and intelligence aimed at other people and not at themselves. And equanimity invites you to say, you know what, your emotions matter just as much as the other person's.
Yeah. Caring for yourself matters just as much as caring for someone else.
That's a good place to move in security. It's again the place, like, I think there's something about all the earning numbers, 1s, 2s, and 6s, where our natural posture in the world is to earn the things that we want. And I think that's entirely good, healthy, and right. That's how we're wired. There are clear negatives if you put all of your chips on earning all the time for this reason. And so security would look like your motive's been fulfilled. You've embraced this other virtue. You've taken a humble posture and you're able to say, and my emotional life matters just as much as everybody else's. Mm-hmm. That's going to give you severe power, by the way, moving back into 2 space.
Right.
If you have self-confidence and self-understanding and you're serving at that space, that's a powerful person.
Mm-hmm. Which also allows you to remove yourself from the equation when you're serving other people. Again, back to that cycle, the equanimity feeds humility, which feeds equanimity, which feeds humility. And like we talk about twos giving to get, and like a lot of the service provided by twos is about ensuring that they have a favor in their pocket for later whenever they need it. And when you combine the innocence available, moving you into this space of humility and grabbing for that equanimity, that understanding that like everyone, that it's all important and you are too, and coming back to that humility. Now you can give from a place of humility, which means you don't need something back.
Yeah, unfortunately, and this is all love to my brothers and sisters who are twos, and they probably know this if they're self-aware. Many of us know that the reason that you're giving to us is because you really need something. Like we know that, and so your gifts have kind of a taint to them if they're coming with that energy. Yeah. However, there are other twos, like there are times where twos come and they're really giving out of a place of true self-actualized strength, self-understanding, and confidence, where it's like, oh, I'm so thrilled this person, is in my life and doing stuff alongside me. And those two experiences are very different.
I've also noticed that the help is more on point.
Yeah.
Like it's
not fishing. It's something else.
There are a lot of twos in my life that are very good at providing things that people need when they need it. And there are a lot of twos that insist on giving regardless of what the other person actually wants.
Right.
And when you can remove yourself from the equation in a way that like not you're still important enough to be valuable and to be considered. But when you stop doing favors, when you stop helping in order to store up something for the future, you actually become better at it
Mhm.
because now you're not putting your own thumb on the scale.
Well said. 3s can elevate some of the stuff we've already talked about with 9s because they share so much here. But as was said, 3s in the high side of their type are going to push into veracity and honesty, into the truthfulness there. Not always easy because the 3 is going to struggle with deceit.
Right.
Going to struggle with colorful shading of the details in order to elevate appearance and the rest. The move into 9 space and right action, I think, is real interesting for 3s because it may not mean what we often think it means. Right action in 9 space for 3s often means you need to stop and rest. You need to ground yourself and get some real perspective on who you are and what you're about, as opposed to right action being you just need to accomplish 8 new things.
In this way, talking about right action is about doing the things that need to be done for the right reasons.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And 3s are like, with this deception piece of them, 3s are very good at doing the things that look like the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And making sure that like they are action centered. They're action forward. They do 3s are very active. They're very accomplished. They achieve a lot of goals. They set a lot of goals and achieve a lot of goals. And sometimes they're really good at making it look like they achieved a lot of goals because they know how to cheat the system. And it's not about cheating. It's just about like skipping the stuff that doesn't matter. It's fine. Let's skip over the things that other people aren't going to notice or that aren't going to affect the outcome. Let's make sure that this looks as successful as we possibly can make it. And when 3s grab onto that right action that's available at 9, there's a space. There is space for them to slow down and to figure out what the right and necessary and good thing is to do, as opposed to focusing on achieving as much as possible to look as good as possible.
I like the image here of motive. The right reason needs to come into play here.
Yeah.
It can't be unthinking, bagging of success stories. What's the reason behind this? And if the reason is just appearances, that's, as has been said, that's just reduces to smoke and mirrors at some level.
Right.
There needs to be something of body and substance there worth naming. If you can get that, it pushes you not only into, as was said, truth and veracity. There's something like real about your work at that level. Yeah. There is something that's probably a real part of you as well.
Yeah.
You're not simply trying to perform for other people and their expectations because you found the right reason.
Right.
You found something that has far more meaning than somebody else's, always fluctuating expectations.
Right. Yeah, I think about over the last 10 years or so, it has become very, very clear that the New York Times bestseller list doesn't really mean anything if you know how to game the system. That the Amazon review system doesn't really mean anything because there are whole farms of people whose job it is to create reviews. And you can literally buy thousands of reviews to make your Amazon product look better than other people's. And it doesn't matter the quality. You made it look like this thing was good. And this space of pulling from right action and moving yourself into veracity, into this truthfulness, into living what's real, says, it's okay if nobody read my book. I did the best I possibly could, and I created something good.
Right.
And if nobody reads it, that's okay because I did something good.
That'd be truly high side. And that's a difficult goal for a lot of 3s to have.
Oh, sure. Yeah. This is not pipe dream goal, but like this is, but because I think this is part of where 9s live.
Sure.
Is that like I don't care what other people think about me. I just don't ever want to hear about it. I want to be proud of the work that I do.
Right.
And when 3s get into this space of pulling from right action and living in truth and putting truth into the world, the things that they are creating can be good for their own sake, and they don't have to get someone else to approve of it.
Right.
And this is the space where you get, like, you really expose the excellence that 3s have already cultivated despite appearances.
I want to say that there is some sort of middle ground here, both in which you are doing the right thing and the people who matter actually see it.
Yep.
You know, and like people who's, I think this is, I mean, because I know so many 3-1 combos, I think this is a reason that a lot of 3s are attracted to 1s is either friends or partners.
Mm-hmm.
The 1's not going to lie. And if they actually, like, you know, win the 1's approval, as it were, or assessment, all these are the wrong terms. If the 1 will be honest, and if they honestly say, look, this was incredible, that's what the 3 actually wants.
Right.
This person does see the truth and is naming it, and it creates buzz and connection there.
Right.
This has been something, I don't know if this is worth saying, like in the project that I'm involved in right now, 2 of the projects, a lot of my conversations with my wife have been weeding out certain assessments and elevating others.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like there's a sphere of people who we actually want compliments from, as it were. And if they're giving, 1, because they're honest, and 2, because they have a radar that is the radar that is the one that we are seeking, as it were.
Yeah.
And we can filter out all the noise at that moment.
Right.
Even if it's real positive, you know, because it's not necessarily what we're seeking. But I feel like that's where the 3 is kind of living. Anyway,
yeah,
it's amplified so much if you do it for the right reason.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of compliments that you would get, you did it for the right reason, and you got the feedback that you were kind of seeking.
Right.
Pushes the 3 perhaps to be even more courageous in the future. And that's what you're going to grab at 6.
And not just courageous, but courageous to believe in yourself.
Right.
Because you don't, the thing that you did in the truthfulness of who you are is excellent. And now you can believe that version of yourself is worthwhile.
It's a great way to put that.
Which brings you back to the truth, which propels you into the more you believe in yourself, the easier it is to be yourself. And
what you've done is you've created an engine. All of these are engines. Like it's a self-perpetuating machine. In fact, it even enhances itself as it goes.
Right.
Is how, it's a dumb illustration, but it's how compound interest works. Compound interest is super boring, but if you're making 10% on your money every year, it's like you take $100 and it's all of a sudden it's $1 million after 15 years, and you're like, how'd that happen? You know, or what is it? It's the old story of a king grants a peasant, you know, whatever he wishes for doing some service to him, and the peasant says, do you have a chessboard? King says yes. He's like, I just want 1 grain of rice on the first square, and then double it on the second square into 2 pieces of rice, and then on the third square to 4 pieces of rice. Well, when you compound it 64 times, which is, it's whatever it is, 1 to the 64th power, 2, that would still be 1. However that math equation works. I'm a philosopher, as I said at the beginning. I don't know math, but
I
apparently
you,
it's
but
a
I've
ton of
never
rice.
heard this before.
You've never heard this before?
No, nope.
Okay, so if you
I get it. I fully understand it.
if you double it and double
Never
it and double it and double it,
yeah,
it's an enormous amount of rice.
right.
But it doesn't seem like that at first. You're just like, anyway.
That's silly.
I totally got off on this, but the truth inspires courage, which inspires truth, which inspires courage, and it builds and builds and builds.
Right.
Did I mention that we have new puppies? I'm just a little bit sleep deprived.
I don't think you mentioned it while we were recording. I know that you have new
Yeah,
puppies.
I think I did.
Well, at least not in this episode.
I did in our last episode. So, it really is the case. New puppies aren't like having a newborn.
Mm-hmm.
They're
That's true.
It's about 40%, maybe 30% of the
How long
newborn
ago-
experience.
It's been a while since you had a newborn, huh?
Perhaps. Or maybe I just devote a lot of time and attention to my puppies.
Could be that, yeah.
Maybe it's the two puppies. My two puppies love me. It's been quite a bit. I'm picking up way more poop with these dogs than I did with either of my kids.
Well, it's harder to put diapers on dogs. So
I totally cleaned out my car last week. Took my dogs to the park today in my freshly cleaned
it's like
car and got out of the car having had to pick up puke with a tampon that was in my glove box. I'm walking to the park with two puppies and a tampon filled with puke going, this is the life right here.
Yep. That's what it is. Yeah.
All right, Force.
This is what you get for getting puppies.
Fool. I thought that was funny. Force high value here is equanimity. Again, high side, opposite of their sin. As we said earlier, envy is going to be the thing that fours struggle with most.
Yep.
Even the contempt that you see from fours towards others, it gets like you're just like, no. Everything's balanced and has its place in the rest. That message doesn't sell to a 4,
Right.
you know? So how do you get there?
The popular kids have their own struggles too.
Yes. This that's right. I don't want to say that I've had this fight with somebody recently, but what do you need? I don't know if this is the easiest road, but humility is available in 2 space.
Yeah.
So if you go your stress number, being humble actually matters in getting balanced and on the high side of 4 space.
And we didn't say this specifically when we were talking about 2s, but like humility is not about lowering yourself. It's about not thinking about yourself as much. It's about spending less of your time and energy comparing yourself to other people.
Right.
Because there's basically no value from that.
Yeah, as is said, the envy is the only one of the deadly sins that gives you nothing in return. It seems so clean as I say it, humility to equanimity here. So I don't know if it needs a ton more unpacking, but like finding the humble posture for the 4 is the invitation. And it's a tool that's available to you, apparently.
Yeah.
So.
And it brings you into the space where like it's not just about with 1s and 2s, or particularly 2s, it is a little bit more about like seeing other people in a different kind of light. But with 4s, humility is bringing you into equanimity, is actually about seeing yourself in the right place in the line.
Right. There it is.
Yeah.
You get your eyes off yourself in the move towards humility, but you gain yourself moving back to center.
Right.
But now you just see yourself in a correct light.
Right.
There's an experience that some of us have had in leaving, those of us who grew up in the United States. It can be really common for people who, for the first time, leave the United States to go to another country for an extended amount of time, see a different world, and then they return. And when they come back to the States, they see the United States different. And they see themselves in the global perspective in a different kind of way.
Right.
It's real common for people who live stateside to have this experience because of course the United States is the only thing that matters in the whole world and everybody knows it.
It's the greatest country on earth.
That's what I hear. But I don't know as much as I think I know. I'm not as great as I think I am, etc. can come out when you leave that space. Yeah. What the embracing of equanimity does for the 4 is then when you move into security at 1, there's serenity. There's movement, and it is the serene kind of movement that comes.
And it's not being tossed around by the whims of your internal sensors as much. It's accepting the things that are happening to you a little bit more readily. There's a sense of like where ones in part need serenity to stop fixing everything. Fours with serenity gain this like roller coasters are a lot of fun, but they're not fun when you're on them all the time.
Right.
And like there's an ability to sort of get off the roller coaster and even to sort of compress the highs and the lows so that not necessarily getting rid of them, but you aren't pulled by them. It's less necessary to make sure that if you are sad today, you are the saddest you could be.
Right.
Like it lowers the highs and raises the lows like a compressor, and like gives you space to just enjoy where things are at.
Yeah, that's what I hear here is that this is serenity is about feeling more comfortable in your own skin and a devaluation of whatever you think your tragic flaw is.
Yeah.
There's more of at one space, you're going to embody more. You're getting out of your emotional center. You're getting into your physicality and feeling at home in the world.
And just softening the extremes.
Yeah. And I think those go together. Because the world itself is an extreme in those ways.
Right. And as idealists, ones and fours, along with sevens, sometimes spend a little bit too much time and energy on extremes. Black and white thinking, high highs and low lows for fours.
The opposite of choppy water skiing lakes.
Yeah. Yep.
As it's TJ will verify.
Yes. Choppy water lakes.
Yeah. Fives. Fives virtue is non-attachment. For those who withdraw to find security and have, those kind of stockpiling instincts, making sure that they got everything, non-attachment's going to be very difficult. It's going to, again, be the opposite of greed and tricky to get there.
Yeah.
The move to 7, which is their stress number, ends up being the move towards sobriety. You got thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like to think of the idea of non-attachment as sort of like loose hands, loose grips. Like you can hold on to things, but don't hold it so tightly that you can't ever let it go. Like and I think that's a big part of what non-attachment is for fives. And then thinking about for like that movement into sobriety, into the space where you aren't so concerned about like almost like covering up the truth. Part of what they need to be sober from is this idea that they can control themselves, they can protect themselves in these ways. This sobriety that's available is like it's almost like not needing to control all the things, not needing to have all the things, not needing to make sure that you are protected, not needing to like greed and gluttony, which is the vices, the sins, the passions for fives and sevens respectively. Like they're so close together, but one is about consumption and one is about keeping. And when fives embrace this idea of sobriety, it affects their need to keep and protect. And that sobriety is also about understanding that they are not, like, the way that they see the world is not exclusive. Like it's not like when you are sober, you realize that like your addicted self saw the world in a certain way. And fives who believe that they can stand on the outside and observe everything need recovery from that addiction. Like you literally cannot be unattached to the world. And non-attachment comes in when you gain the sobriety of recognizing that like you are not outside of it. The addiction that you are facing is inside of you. And like facing sobriety for actual addicts like AA, Narcotics Anonymous, like all Gamblers Anonymous, all of these things, part of their work of getting to sobriety is recognizing that the thing that's happening to you is inside of you and you're never going to recover from it. And 5s embracing this sobriety says you are part of the world and you're never actually going to remove yourself from your life.
Thing that comes to my mind here is more of an illustration. I think there's sobriety as a physical element. I keep thinking of it for 5s as a mental element of similar to ones where the sobriety of judgment, sobriety of thinking can be very helpful, especially as it taps down one's fears. So just as an illustration, I know that I bring up Warren Buffett a lot just because I like the world of finance and what comes out of his mouth. But the hallway line to his office, it has newspaper clippings of everything in the world breaking. The market crashing here, World War starting here, Nixon resigning here. And as he's going into his office, he's seeing all of these what appear to be quite catastrophic events. And yet the world moves forward, you know. And there's something, I suppose, as I'm imagining him trying to grab hold of was it look like to go to the high side and stress. It looks a lot like that. He surrounded himself with these reminders that things can look quite terrible, but generally there still is an even keel to things, and to have a perspective of a certain sort that is still grounded. I suppose that's what I think of with sober-mindedness. Yeah. And it allows one to have, if you're able to embrace that, it allows one to have a posture of non-attachment.
Yeah. And in a similar way to like 4s needing to, like in an average to unhealthy space, 4s needing to be on the roller coaster of their emotions, 5s needing to protect themselves from all of the things, needing to ride the wave of all of the things that could go wrong in order to protect themselves. Sobriety comes in and sort of like challenges that worldview entirely and says you don't actually need to worry as much as you do.
Right.
And when you get that sense of sobriety, as we're saying from this 7 place, it can move you back into that space where you can hold everything a little bit more loosely. Again, non-attachment is not detachment. Non-attachment means that you can hold it with loose hands.
That looseness comes out, and it's a very quick step into security right there, because that is the move, as we've said in the past. The virtue for 8s is innocence, and that sure sounds like holding things loosely in that way.
Yeah. Ted Lasso. If you've seen Ted Lasso, you know like one of his big things is like be a goldfish. Don't you can remember things for 10 seconds. You can let it emotionally affect you for 10 seconds, but then keep moving forward and forget about the things that have happened. Whether or not that's good advice, that's not what I'm debating. But the idea of like living with the kind of innocence where you're not attached to the outcome of certain events, where you're not like holding on so tightly to the things that you think are going to protect you. Like innocence is an openness, especially for 5s.
Perfect. Yeah. It may feel like we're going around the circle in the same way with 9s, 3s, and 6s because we're hitting the same values over and over again, but this just happens to be the construction of the harmony triad there.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
So
all of us are okay with that.
6s will have a hard time getting to courage, to trusting themselves, perhaps trusting others. The courage required, difficult. Moving to 3 space is going to be that move to veracity. And that's a stabilizing, that's again moving against their repressed center.
Right.
Shoring that thinking up there by saying, here's what's real and true, actualized. You got thoughts on 6s moving to 3?
Yes. 6s are quite good at inventing possibilities. I mean, it's all part of like thinking through all of the things and needing to be prepared for anything that might happen, sixes are also really good at becoming too attached to things that probably aren't going to happen. And like this is the chaining. This is the part of unproductive thinking and being overly obsessed, overly concerned, overly fearful of things that may not ever come to fruition. This is part of why sixes can get stuck in their unhealthy places. And when you can grab onto that truth, onto veracity at 3, not only do you get the opportunity to recognize how great you are, but truth and veracity and like living out of a true place informs what's real and breaks down chaining and says, oh, it's actually not possible that if your car tire is flat, that means that you aren't going to have children. Like that, the way that truth can speak into the scenarios that sixes are going to be playing out can really build up and give positive momentum to the 6 that's struggling to figure out, like, how do I fight all of these demons? And truth says, oh, there's actually not any demons. There's a frog over there that needs to be taken care of, but there's no demons.
Building on that fire with the courage in hand, again, the move towards right action for the right reasons in 9 spaces can be a quick jump. And especially as you've said in the past, right reason emerges here very strongly. It's not recklessness, and it's not cowardice. Obviously, you're doing things for the right reasons, and even I imagine the 6 can feel confident in themselves and what they've done at that point in time.
Yeah. And even accepting that like other people may not see this, but I know this thing was right. Because truth informed my courage, which took me to the place of right action, which brought me back to courage to be able to say, this is the right thing for me to do.
Yep. Verification and veracity have the same root.
Yep.
It's going to be that kind of element. You don't necessarily need verification if it's the case that you already built your actions based on these true things that you knew and discovered in that stress move. Dang, feels like we're going quick through the 6s, but we've hit that move.
Yeah.
Twice already.
The farther along we get, the more we've already talked about all the things.
7s. 7's virtue is sobriety. Can be very hard for those who wrestle with gluttony. The move to 1 space is the move into serenity. What do you see when you see that move?
This one is really interesting to think about because it feels like that the serenity for 7s is so much different from serenities for 1s.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think this is such a contrast that this is the one to highlight to say the truth for all of them, which is that like serenity for 7s is different from serenity for 1s, etc., all the way around the circle.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking about the type of serenity that 7s can grab onto in that 1 space, when the things in your life are breaking, when you aren't able to escape the hardship, when you don't know how to move beyond where you're at, grabbing onto serenity and accepting that like those things that you're going through may actually be valuable, and even if they're not, this is still the place that you're supposed to be right now, is a good thing to learn. When you're always on the run, even if you stop in a place that's not necessarily the best place, stopping is still probably a good thing every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I think that's exactly it. It's somehow coming to terms with the things you're avoiding.
Yeah.
Serenity invites that. And that also feels quite difficult as I'm saying it. So I would need to, hear from 7s, I suppose, on this, but the bigger idea that you have permission to stop and rest in
Mhm.
things that may feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Is a tool.
And yeah, they're probably going to be hard, but this is a place where destiny or not, this is the place where you are, and learning to accept that is a good thing.
But
That is part of what serenity is.
I suppose, as we've been saying, serenity does imply movement, though. You're not necessarily. I said rest in it. That's probably not right. You're moving through it
Mhm.
with some intentionality, and perhaps even experiencing something like flow there.
Yeah.
Trying to engage the world with that in mind, as opposed to the opposite being, I'm going to counteract the world by, my voracious appetite getting fed.
Mhm.
Those are two
Well, and
different postures.
I think even like coming back to your water skiing example, like serenity might look like getting to the lake and seeing how choppy it is and deciding not to get on the water skis because you know it's not actually going to be that enjoyable. The addiction of sevens says, I'm going out no matter what the conditions are.
I gotta think on that.
And that actually is the, like, sobriety is the right word there, because like you get to the place where you don't need to feed the addiction when you are more able to accept where you are.
And I suppose that's the angle. Yeah, I'm trying to envision that angle, and that's what it strikes me as is once you've embraced that movement in that space, then sobriety becomes much easier,
Mm-hmm.
as it were. Because again, you're not.
Yeah.
You've cut off the fuel for
Right.
avoidance.
Right.
And then it's a real quick move to non-attachment.
Right.
Similar kind of move, I think. For, sevens move into 5 space and security.
Mm-hmm.
Sobriety and non-attachment just have a very clean, common angle there.
Yeah.
Again, it's about
the stuff, and again, the idealism is such a important part of this equation. 1s, 4s, and 7s are all idealists, and this like holding on to that thing that you're hoping for, holding on to that thing that like you can always find your escape route to get to a better thing, holding on to that space where you never want to face the hard stuff. That is addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So coming from that serenity and pulling yourself into the space of sobriety where you're not feeding the addiction anymore, and pulling you into non-attachment, holding all of your stuff with loose hands. That can also mean holding your hardship with loose hands. You still have to hold it, but you don't, we're not saying you're going to be stuck there. And pulling you, being able to hold all of it loosely feeds your own sobriety. It's easier to move away from an addiction the more you accept that you don't want the thing that you're addicted to anymore.
Yeah, replacement matters commonly on these fronts. That's interesting. Yeah, but that's sobriety will feed non-attachment, which will feed sobriety, which will feed non-attachment, and then soon you realize that you're free.
Yeah.
Bang. Wrap up with some 8s.
Great.
8s move to innocence in the high side. Again, kind of the contrast to lust and the intensity of experience desired by 8s. In 5 space, they're going to gain that non-attachment and the high side of 5. What do you see as the angle there?
Well, I see, to me, a big part of what innocence is for 8s is what you were like before you had to put on armor. And when you come into space of non-attachment, part of the loose hands is recognizing that it's okay if you're not in control of the world anymore.
Right.
You just plain don't have control of everything, and there are things that you don't need to control. And loose hands says, yeah, I'm gonna still enact. I'm gonna do what I can, but I can't control everything, and I'll allow myself to like experience the things that I don't have control over, and etc. And pulls you back into a space of innocence. Again, that childlikeness of not needing to be in control of the world, not needing to protect yourself from everything, not needing to like stand up and be strong and like have the most intense experiences because you're an adult, damn it. And like all of that stuff that comes along with the lack of innocence. Part of what you get is like when you are able to pull from non-attachment, then you're just literally accepting that you're not in control anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I see also. There is something like a surrendering of agency there that just allows innocence to emerge.
Yeah.
Innocence embraced is going to invite humility.
Yep.
And the humble posture of 8s can be really a delight to watch.
Right.
When they don't have a spiky exterior up, when they're coming to the world in a posture of play.
Yeah.
When they're reaching down, as it were, to be with those who need encouragements and elevated, that humble spirit, that often is just a human being alive.
Well, and so we've spoken a lot with Joey Shuey lately, and as a female 8 who has been steeped in the Enneagram for many of her years, she so well understands and sort of encapsulates this idea that like 8s are not thinking about themselves. They're focused on the task at hand. There's a difference between self-absorption and self-assuredness, and pulling into the like from that space of innocence into the space of humility. It is even more of that, like using your significant power and energy and ability to focus on the task at hand. It gets even easier to be less self-absorbed. Like, you don't have to shape the world the way you think it should be. You can actually use that energy and strength and your own ability to just get stuff done to serve others more, and like to offer all of that to the world becomes easier when you pull in from that humility of 2, and it brings you back further into innocence, which pulls you back into more humility, and just like everything else becomes a cycle.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, you had mentioned earlier the idea of humility being not thinking too much of yourself, but thinking about yourself too much. And the 8 who is constantly self-protective in that way.
Yeah.
If that's not on your radar, if you're not thinking about yourself too much, all that energy goes somewhere else.
Right.
And often it goes towards those, what those elements that 8s will naturally care for, justice and really serving with strength.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a fantastic image of humility in the world.
Right.
Thanks. So that's what I got. You got anything else?
I don't think so. I think it's too short.
Yeah,
right?
that's why.
Like
This normally takes forever.
We've been doing like 3-4 hour recordings so much lately that this hour and a half is like, did we miss something? Did we do something wrong? I don't understand.
Well, if you want to hear the rest of our 3-hour recordings, do subscribe to our podcast or go to aroundthecircle.org. There's all sorts of fun things there are countless hours to entertain you if this didn't scratch your itch quite sufficiently enough. Music here is by Brian Claxton. Intro music's by The Collection. We continue to do those Zoom meetings. So again, at aroundthecircle.org, just hit events and come join us. And be cheering for us just in your heart. Again, TJ and I are kind of doing a big project right now, and hopeful that we'll have something to say about that here in the next few months or so, and perhaps even invite some of y'all in to take a look. But that's what I got. You got anything else?
I just want to say High Side Highway again. That's all.
Done. Suppose you normally say I got nothing, man, so I can't actually move forward.
I got nothing, man.
You got You see, Jay Wilson, he's officially awesome. I'm Jeff Cook. Who you aren't isn't interesting.